Hello everyone, and welcome to A Teacher Explains.
Mass media functions as a powerful, lifelong agent of human socialization and learning. We will examine major theories explaining mediaviolence, the role of cognition and context, active audience perspectives, and the developmental impacts of modern digital environments on children and adolescents. The theoretical focus on human development accelerated following World War II. During this period, rapid economic growth and consumer culture coincided with broad behavioral shifts. Simultaneously, television expanded into the domestic sphere to become the dominant medium. This adoption occurred alongside a relative decline in the daily influence of traditional institutions, such as the family, the church, and the school. Observing these societal changes, researchers moved away from limited effects assumptions. They developed learning-based models to understand exactly how prolonged media exposure shapes human behavior. Children became a vital demographic for this research. They are actively developing cognitive and social skills, and they rely heavily on media as a primary source of information about the world. Consequently, media operates as a primary structural agent of socialization, directly connecting communication theory to concrete developmental outcomes. This models catharsis theory, a 1940s hypothesis that media violence releases aggressive impulses harmlessly. Research discredited this. Media violence doesn't serve a positive social function. Instead, data shows a consistent pattern. Exposure to violent media is associated with increased aggressive behavior. To explain this pattern, theorists developed social learning theory in the 1960s and 70s. This model posits that behavior is acquired through observation, imitation, and identification. Albert Bandura's Bobo doll experiments demonstrated this mechanism. The studies showed that children readily imitate aggressive behaviors they observe on screen, even when those behaviors are not directly reinforced by an adult. A core concept here is vicarious reinforcement. This occurs when an individual learns by observing the consequences administered to others, shaping their own actions based on those observed rewards or punishments. Social learning distinguishes between direct imitation, the simple copying of a behavior, and identification. Identification involves adopting the deeper values, attitudes, or internal traits of a media model. This process is subtle, exerting a highly durable influence on a child's development over time. These findings established that media operates as a powerful behavioral model. Humans learn by systematically watching the outcomes of others' actions. The 1980s introduced social cognitive theory, focusing on the internal mental processes of the audience, specifically how viewers form mental pictures of observed behaviors. This is Bandura's triadic model. It explains behavior by analyzing three distinct nodes: the action, personal factors like thoughts and emotions, and the external environment. These elements continuously interact in a reciprocal looping feedback network. Within this network, media content can produce inhibitory effects, where observing a punished behavior reduces the likelihood of imitation. Conversely, it can produce disinhibitory effects, where a rewarded behavior increases imitation. Leonard Berkowitz expanded on this with his cue theory, detailing the concept of priming in relation to media violence. This visual models how media provides specific cues that activate related ideas in a viewer's memory. Exposure to violence triggers a cascading network of stored aggressive scripts, making those behaviors more likely to occur in real-world contexts. Over the long term, repeated exposure causes desensitization. This results in a reduced emotional response, lower empathy toward victims, and a greater tolerance for aggression. However, these cognitive effects depend heavily on contextual variables. Viewer reactions change based on whether the depicted violence is framed as justified, realistic, or humorous. Media teaches, stores, and activates behavioral patterns over time by shaping the internal representations and moral inhibitions of the audience. This focus on cognitive processing challenges the assumption of a purely passive audience. The active theory of television viewing posits that children are active interpreters of the content they consume. Viewers develop viewing schemas. These are mental frameworks that organize information and dictate how an individual attends to and ultimately understands media messages. This leads to the developmental perspective. Media effects are not uniform. They vary significantly based on the specific stage of a viewer's cognitive development. Developmentally, children under 8 often interpret media literally, lacking the tools to distinguish persuasive ads from entertainment. However, by age 10, children develop the cognitive ability to recognize persuasion and understand abstract intent. This distinction fuels an ongoing debate. The empowered child model argues that children eventually become skilled, critical media users. In contrast, the critical perspective warns that heavy, early media exposure may cause harm by replacing crucial face-to-face social interactions. Media effects rely on developmental readiness. The exact same content can yield significantly different psychological impacts depending on a viewer's capacity to abstract intent. Researchers synthesized these variables into the General Aggression Model, or GAM. It begins with inputs, the person and situation. These filter into the internal state, emotion, cognition, and arousal, dictating final behavior. Repeated cycles through this loop develop long-term aggressive beliefs and scripts. The GAM is highly applicable to interactive media, such as violent video games. Interactive formats require active performance, modifying the standard variables of media influence. Because the user controls the action, interactivity strengthens the mechanisms of identification and emotional involvement far beyond passive observation. This engagement facilitates behavioral rehearsal. Players do not simply watch aggressive actions, they actively perform and practice them within the digital environment. The General Aggression Model accounts for how modern, interactive media structures can accelerate both the formation of aggressive beliefs and the process of emotional desensitization. While violence is heavily studied, media influence extends across multiple dimensions of human development. It plays a significant role in socialization, identity formation, gender role expectations, and body image dissatisfaction. This broad influence is conceptualized in super-peer theory. In this framework, media acts as a powerful peer, normalizing risky behaviors and providing social scripts when adolescents lack real-world experience. Furthermore, critical cultural scholars analyze what they term kinderculture. This perspective argues that corporate commercialization has reshaped traditional childhood boundaries, defining young people as consumers. Today, these developmental processes occur within a ubiquitous digital era. Smartphones, social media, and constant connectivity have constructed entirely new, persistent developmental environments. These environments present a complex dichotomy. They introduce novel risks, such as cyberbullying and emotional burnout, while simultaneously offering new opportunities for self-expression and community support for marginalized identities. Media influence is a highly contextual, learned, and developmental process. Children and adolescents engage with media as both vulnerable subjects and active participants, navigating content that continuously shapes their cognitive and social growth. The theories discussed in this lesson are drawn from foundational texts in mass communication research.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel.